wasn't supposed to be there that night. Not in that apartment. Not on that couch. And certainly not in that moment. But life has this cruel way of pulling you toward the very things you swore you'd never touch again. It bends your rules, mocks your plans, and leaves you standing in the wreckage of everything you thought was safe. Once, I believed my life was simple, predictable, safe. Love to me was a promise, something sacred and permanent. You make it once, and it lasts. At least, that's what I thought. But love doesn't always end in fire. Sometimes, it just fades. So slowly that you don't even realize it's gone until the silence around you feels louder than your heartbeat. When he left, he didn't even look me in the eye. 5 years together, and all I got was a note taped to the fridge. Short, shaky, and meaningless. His key lay beside it, catching the dim light of the kitchen. I remember staring at that piece of metal, wondering how something so small could hurt so much. I held it too tightly, felt its edge dig into my palm until it stung. Maybe it wasn't the key that cut me. Maybe it was the truth. The apartment turned into a tomb that night. The air was thick, heavy. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the ticking clock, felt like it was mocking me. I couldn't breathe inside those walls. That's when I called Carrie. My best friend since forever. She could always hear the truth behind my voice, even when I was pretending to be fine. I didn't even need to explain. "Pack a bag," she said softly. "You're staying with me tonight?" No questions, no judgment, just certainty. That was who she was. Someone who didn't need the story to stand beside you. I agreed instantly, because staying felt like suffocating. Leaving at least felt like survival. Carrie's place was different. An old brick building near the edge of downtown. The kind that creaked when the wind shifted and smelled faintly of rain and history. The moment I stepped in, I felt like I could finally exhale. Sunlight spilled through tall windows, painting the room in warmth, trying to erase the ghosts I'd brought with me. When I arrived, Carrie hugged me tight, her words a balm I didn't know I needed. "You'll have the apartment to yourself for a few days," she said. "Nathan's out of town." Nathan, her older brother. I remembered him, vaguely. Back in school, he was the quiet one. The kind who seemed to live half in this world and half somewhere else. Always with that worn-out guitar, always lost in thought. He barely spoke, but when he did, you listened. So when she said he wouldn't be around, I felt relief. I didn't want company. I didn't want questions. I wanted silence, the kind you can hide inside without explaining why. For 2 days, I drifted like a ghost through her home. Coffee went cold in my hands. My reflection in the window didn't even look like me. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware that my world had stopped. Then, on the third night, I heard it, the front door creaking open. A pause, then footsteps, slow, steady, certain. My heart froze. For a moment, I thought maybe I was dreaming, but then he appeared. Nathan. Only he wasn't the boy I remembered. He carried silence differently now. Not like emptiness, but like depth. There was something unreadable in his eyes, something that made the air shift around him. His hair was longer, a little messy, like he hadn't decided whether he cared. A few strands of gray caught the light, making him look both older and calmer, like someone who'd seen too much and learned not to talk about it. He didn't seem surprised to see me there, just quietly curious. "Didn't know you were staying," he said, his voice rough, low, the kind that lingers long after it's gone. "I didn't plan to," I replied. For a second, our eyes met, and in that brief silence between us, something flickered. Not attraction exactly, but recognition. Two people who'd both been cracked by life, standing in the same quiet room, pretending not to notice the weight they carried. Nathan nodded once, dropped his bag by the door, and disappeared into his room. But even after he was gone, the stillness he left behind felt different, charged, alive, uneasy. That night, I lay awake listening to the faint sounds from down the hall. The floor creaked, a door clicked, and my chest ached with something I couldn't name. I told myself it was nothing. Just a man returning home. Just coincidence. But deep down, I already knew better. Because sometimes, the people we're not supposed to meet again are exactly the ones who find us when we've lost ourselves completely. He was dressed simply. A plain t-shirt, joggers, and that quiet kind of calm that doesn't have to announce itself. It just fills the space. When our eyes met, he gave me a small nod. Polite, effortless, the kind that says, "I see you," without demanding anything more. "Hey," he said, voice low and steady. I managed a faint, "Hi." 2 syllables. That's all it took to make the air feel suddenly heavier. Familiar, yet strange. The next few days drifted by like mist. We moved around each other carefully, as if afraid to disturb something fragile. A quiet thanks when passing the remote. A half smile over morning coffee. 2 people pretending not to notice the pull of each other's presence. And that suited me. I didn't want connection. I wanted silence. To breathe. To disappear. But silence never stays empty for long. It starts whispering back. One evening, the air in the apartment felt too heavy, too still. I slipped outside, needing space. The autumn night wrapped around me, crisp, alive, tasting faintly of rain and smoke. Streetlights flickered like old memories refusing to fade. Leaves skittered along the sidewalk, chasing shadows. The kind of sounds only lonely hearts truly hear. By the time I returned, the apartment was breathing again. Warm light spilling from the kitchen, the faint scent of rosemary and red wine curling through the air. Nathan was there, reclined on the couch, one ankle crossed over the other, a quiet picture of calm. The TV flickered, painting his face in gold and shadow. "You like this movie?" I asked, surprised to see Notting Hill playing. He glanced at me, the faintest trace of a smile tugging at his mouth. "Only when I'm depressed," he said softly. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. 2 glasses of wine already sat on the table. He didn't offer, but I didn't wait for him to. I sat down, the distance between us just wide enough to keep it safe, or at least to pretend it was. The movie carried the silence for us. Familiar lines, soft light, the kind of warmth that creeps in slowly, the way dawn seeps into a dark room. When Julia Roberts whispered, "I'm just a girl, standing in front of a boy, asking him to love her," I felt it, that brief shift in the air. Nathan's gaze turned toward me, just for a second. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Something in that silence said everything words couldn't. That night became a quiet beginning. Days turned into weeks. The apartment found its rhythm. Sunlight spilled through tall windows each morning, turning the brick walls soft gold. I started to recognize the sound of his footsteps, steady, unhurried, a sound that somehow made me feel safe. We built small, unspoken rituals, shared coffee in the morning, grocery lists scribbled on the fridge, late-night movies that neither of us ever finished. Our conversations stayed light, music, books, random things. But beneath the calm, something unspoken lingered. It wasn't love. Not yet. It was something gentler. A quiet warmth, a reminder that life could still be kind after it's broken you. Then came that night, I couldn't sleep. The clock blinked 2:47 a.m., time standing still. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the fridge and the wind brushing the glass. I wandered into the living room, barefoot, wrapped in an oversized shirt that wasn't mine. Nathan sat there in the half-dark, the blue glow of his phone casting soft light across his face. His expression was unreadable, calm, distant, but somehow still entirely there. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his voice just above a whisper. He didn't look up when he spoke. "Can't sleep?" I shook my head. "You?" He set his phone aside and patted the couch beside him, a quiet invitation. I hesitated, then crossed the room and sat down. We didn't speak for a while. The silence hung between us. Not cold, not empty, just listening. The city murmured faintly outside. A car passing, a dog barking somewhere far off, the hum of the refrigerator steady beneath it all. Our breathing found the same rhythm, slow and uneven, like two people learning how to exist in the same quiet. Then Nathan broke it. "Do you miss him?" The question hit harder than I expected. I stared at the floor, tracing invisible shapes on the rug. "I don't know," I said finally. "Sometimes I wonder if I ever really had him." He turned his head, studying me, his expression calm, unreadable. "Maybe it's a good thing he's gone," he said quietly. There was no pity in his tone, just truth, and somehow that truth cut deeper than comfort ever could. I looked at him for a long time, searching for something. Judgment, maybe sympathy. But what I found was neither. It was understanding. That still grounded kind of knowing that comes from someone who's seen people break before and rebuild. "I think," I whispered, "I'm more afraid of being wanted than being alone." Nathan's breath caught, not loud, but enough. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, eyes steady on mine. "Rachel," he said softly, "you've always been wanted. You just never noticed." The words sank in slowly, like warmth spreading through cold skin. Something inside me shifted, cracked open, and suddenly the room felt smaller. The world felt smaller. His hand rested near mine, not touching, but close enough for me to feel the heat radiating between us. And before I could think, before I could remind myself of the rules I was supposed to keep, my heart moved first. That night didn't change everything because of what happened, but because of what it revealed. Grief has a way of turning you into a stranger to yourself. You forget what you used to laugh at. You forget how your own voice sounds when it isn't breaking. But sitting there beside someone who saw through my silence, I began to remember who I was before the heartbreak. Nathan didn't try to fix me. He didn't make promises. He just saw me, not as something broken, but as someone still whole beneath the pain. And sometimes, that's all it takes to begin again. The days that followed were quiet, but different. Every glance held weight. Every brush of his shoulder left a trace that lingered longer than it should have. When he smiled from across the room, my chest tightened in a way I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Small, fragile, but alive. We never spoke about that night. We didn't need to. Some things are too delicate for words. One morning, sunlight spilled through the tall windows, painting the brick walls gold. I caught him watching me make coffee. His voice was soft when he said, "You look more like yourself today." I didn't ask what he meant. I already knew. Grief wasn't my reflection anymore. It was just a shadow that followed quietly behind me, no longer defining me. Nathan had become something else entirely. Proof that healing doesn't always arrive as a thunderclap. Sometimes it comes quietly, in stillness, in shared space, in the simple act of being seen. Weeks later, Carrie returned. The moment she saw us together, the ease between us, the wordless rhythm we'd found, she smiled knowingly, but didn't ask. She didn't have to. That evening, as I packed my bag, Nathan leaned against the doorway, arms crossed loosely. "So, back to your place?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "It's time." He nodded, slow. No grand gestures, no goodbyes dressed as promises. Just understanding. But as I reached the door, he spoke again. Quiet, almost hesitant. "Don't disappear again, Rachel." I smiled, meeting his eyes. "I'm not planning to." Walking out of that apartment felt different than the day I'd walked into it. This time, I wasn't running from the past. I was walking toward whatever came next. Because healing doesn't always look like moving on. Sometimes, it looks like standing still long enough for the right person to find you in your silence. Nathan wasn't part of my plan. He wasn't supposed to be a chapter in my story. But maybe he was exactly what the story needed. The unexpected paragraph that changed the ending. Because sometimes, the people who enter quietly leave the loudest echoes behind. And if you're still rebuilding after heartbreak, remember this. You don't have to rush your healing. You don't need to have it all figured out. Sometimes, all you need is a place to rest, a little silence, and someone who reminds you who you were before the breaking.